Hey folks, so welcome to a bit about the case of Germany and the book Global Commons Domestic Decisions. So to start off, our authors note the state of their dependent variables. They know that Germany ratified the Kyoto Protocol, and they know that Germany has passed and stringently enforced climate change abatement policies. Not only that, Germany has also advocated for other states to ratify the Kyoto Protocol and has been highly successful in their implementation of climate change abatement policy. So their question is, why has Germany been so proactive in this way? And particularly, what domestic factors can explain the success? Okay, to just dive a little bit more into these dependent variables of ratification and policy passing. So first one, ratification. I'm not going to go too much into this, but basically Germany is setting really ambitious goals, and as a result of its negotiating with the EU15, this allows for other states to pass less stringent goals and focus a bit more on development. In addition, Germany lobbies Japan and Russia to ratify the Kyoto Protocol and to set bold targets themselves. And they lobby for the return of the US to the Kyoto Protocol after its withdrawal in 2001. So this does not prove to be successful. In terms of domestic policy pursuit and enactment, Germany passes very ambitious CO2 emissions reduction goals. As we can see, 40% by 2020, which it has been successful in realizing, or as of 2010, it seems like it was going to be. Passes ecological tax reform, in which they reduce the average burden of tax on workers, and they increase taxes on oil and natural gas use, and they add a tax on electricity. Germany also pursues a nuclear phase out, which it is seems like it is successful in pursuing, and they pass a renewable energy law, and they have actually overshot their goals by quite a bit. They were aiming for 20% of their electricity coming from renewable sources by 2020, and they're at 46% as of last year. So Germany is putting in work. Just a couple of pie charts to visualize a little bit more the changes in the German economy, and particularly its sources of power. As we can see, in 1997, we have a high reliance upon coal and nuclear energy, whereas today, the primary source of the German power supply is non-nuclear, this is supposed to say renewable sources. Cool, yeah. Okay, so our authors are going to attempt to explain why Germany has been so proactive in its own pursuit of climate change abatement policies and has also encouraged other states to do the same. We're going to look at 3 independent variables that could explain the situation in Germany. Those 3 are electoral and political incentives, policymakers' normative commitments, and finally, political institutions. Okay, so to start with electoral and political incentives, in Germany, public opinion is very strongly in favor of climate change action. In a poll in 2008, 65% of Germans said that climate change was the #1 global threat, which is huge. Okay, so as a result of that, partisan discussion tends to be less about should we pursue climate change abatement policies like it does in other places, for example, the United States, and instead is about how you pursue climate change abatement. For example, like if you will try to get rid of nuclear energy or not. Secondly, self-interest ties in, or political electoral incentives ties in, and that because public opinion is so strongly in favor of climate change abatement, there is this race to the top among political parties to be seen as the party of climate change action, and thus to ensure that the electorate will support them. And then finally, tying into both of these things, we see this positive feedback loop in Germany, that as Germany successfully pursues climate change abatement policies and comes to be seen as a leader and example in the world for doing so, there is more public support for such policy, as it brings a lot of prestige and soft power to Germany. And this increased public support leads to more and more policies being passed. So we have this positive feedback loop there. One funny little caveat that actually part of self-interest in Germany that actually kind of is opposed to climate change abatement policies is this right here. The Social Democrats, which are one of the main political parties in Germany, they have strong ties to the German coal industry. So if we go back here, I mentioned ecological tax reform. It increased taxes on oil and natural gas use, but not on coal use. And we can actually see that reflected in the sources of German electricity, even though coal has reduced quite a bit from 1997 to 2019, 55% to 29%, still 29%. And that has to do with self-interest for the Social Democrats. So, okay, our second independent variable is policymakers' normative commitments and how that might lead to a country being more successful in the pursuit of climate change abatement or in ratification. So in Germany, this is actually less of a big deal because public support for climate change abatement is so strong. You don't have to rely upon policymakers having strong normative values here. It's just in their self-interest to pursue this. So we see that here. Climate change policy comes to be seen as an opportunity. Germany is seen as an innovative world leader in this. And so this is like a big sort of normative shift in Germany and leads to the normative values of individual policymakers being a little bit less essential. However, we do see, primarily for me with Angela Merkel, that her individual normative values do seem to tie in a lot to Germany's success in the pursuit of climate change abatement policies. The authors don't explicitly say this in the book, but it is easy to infer, and I think it's heavily implied. She was the environment minister. She's the leader of the Conservative Party. She has been chancellor since 2005. So I think that her feeling so strongly about environmental policy, as shown by her history with it, ties a lot into Germany's success and continued pursuit of climate change abatement. And then finally, in terms of policymakers' normative commitments, we saw the Red-Green Coalition in Germany from 1998 to 2005. This was a coalition between the Social Democrats and the Green Party. And so the Social Democrats had the largest share of parliament, but in order to have a majority, they teamed up with the Green Party to form a coalition. And in return, the Green Party got the seat of the environment minister, as well as a couple of other things. So the Green Party and its normative commitment to the pursuit of climate change abatement paired up with its leadership role from 1998 to 2005, which was a huge time for climate change abatement policy, as we can see through the pursuit of the Kyoto Protocol. Okay, and then our third independent variable is political institutions in Germany. I've already mentioned these a little bit for the most part. So Germany has a proportional electoral system, which leads to the presence of a Green Party in parliament, and then also has a parliamentary system. And it has 5 main parties, which leads to the competitive leadership and race to the top that I mentioned, and also the necessity of coalitions. And then this is a little less kind of how the authors frame political institutions, but I think it does have an effect on Germany's success here. And that is the strength of the environment ministry in Germany, and especially relative to the economic ministry. The environment ministry is very strong when compared to other states. So looking at how or what this case has to say about the author's argument as a whole, I argue that it does support their hypotheses, which are shown here. I think that Germany does uphold the author's argument. The only one that is a little bit less clear is the second hypothesis, that high cost of compliance for a state leads to greater opposition towards climate change abatement. In Germany, there is a high cost of compliance, as we saw with its shift in energy sources. That took a lot of effort, took a lot of time. It was a huge change for Germany. But we also see the shifting norms and Germany's new status as a world leader in this because of its successful pursuit of climate change abatement. So we actually see that there are not high costs in the end, in fact, this new normative value and this new perception of climate change policy as an opportunity actually results in a high cost of non-compliance for German politicians in terms of climate change abatement. So overall, I think that despite this one being a little bit muddy, Germany does uphold the author's hypotheses and is a good case study for them to support their argument. In terms of what I would modify with this study, overall, I think that it was really interesting and well done and considered new points, looking at the domestic sphere instead of the international sphere. However, I think that the authors should have talked a lot more about German reunification, which took place in 1991. They only really mention it in terms of how shutting down highly polluting and inefficient plants in former East Germany led to Germany being more easily able to reach its emissions reduction targets. But in fact, I actually have spent some time in East Germany. I lived in Leipzig for a while, and to me, it seems like this was surely a bit more complicated than the authors present it to be. I found that there's sort of a sense of nostalgia, at least in Leipzig and my experience, for the days of the DDR or East Germany. And I also found that there's a lot of pain around the history of reunification in Leipzig in terms of after reunification, there was such severe job loss in these cities and such severe depopulation as a result that you end up with these formerly really vibrant cities just being like not quite ghost towns, but like really emptied out. And a lot of that has to do, I imagine, with the closure of these plants that the authors mentioned. Though I don't know that for sure. I would guess that that's probably the case and the result or the cause of the job loss in East Germany. So I would have modified the study to look a bit more at how self-interest or how this affected self-interest and ideas in terms of climate change abatement. I think that surely there was a cost for politicians electorally to pursue this closure in East Germany. Just thinking about self-interest and electoral incentives. And I think it also would have been interesting to see kind of how values were different in East and West Germany, thinking about normative commitments and ideas. Okay, thank you for listening.